We actually had 2 folks walk in.
Okay.
So,
all right.
That works.
That works.
That's how it goes in events. Like, some people don't show and then others show
Yeah.
up who you didn't expect. So, thank you all so much for coming tonight. Okay, we're recording. Hi, I'm Mariah Berlanga-Shevchuk. Welcome to the Oregon Jewish Museum and Center for Holocaust Education. I am the head of public engagement here, so it's my privilege and honor to get to put programs together like this with fabulous members of our community. Just a bit of housekeeping, should you need them, the bathrooms and a water fountain are just down that hallway. There's also a gender-neutral bathroom downstairs on the, towards the gift shop if you would prefer that. And we get right into it. I'll just introduce our panelists and then we'll have some questions. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. This is clearly a small group, so we're going to have an intimate conversation tonight. And thank you all for rolling with changing the layout of the room. I love this. Okay, so Rabbi Rachel Joseph joined Congregation Beth Israel in July of 2012, bringing her passion, commitment, and leadership for community building to our community. She is a leader in social and racial justice activism, as well as in equity and inclusion efforts with the CBI and Greater Portland communities. I won't read all of the boards that she's on, but trust that she's very involved in both the local and national level. Since becoming an Oregonian, Rabbi Joseph has steadily increased her collection of gear and love of outdoor adventures. There's some similarities, I think, between Blair and Rabbi Rachel. I won't read all of these, but if you want, there's a very fun and charming bio for Rabbi Rachel on the website. And then we have Blair Denniberg, who is an alumnus of Tisch PDX's second cohort and a proud Jewish lesbian. She first joined the Tisch PDX board as secretary in 2021 and now serves as board co-chair. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Gender Studies from the University of South Florida and a Master of Nonprofit Management degree from Florida Atlantic University. Blair has worked as an executive administrator at OMSI, the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, where she found a strong sense of purpose by supporting science education, equality, and anti-racism. She currently serves as the executive assistant to the CEO at Northwest Permanente. Outside of work, Blair is passionate about bringing Portland's queer Jewish community together through Shabbat dinners and queer mikveh gatherings. She is a member of Congregation Shir Tikvah, also serves as a volunteer contemporary mikveh guide at Rachel's Well. And in addition to her queer Jewish community, Blair also serves as a member of the board of Five Oaks Museum, which funny enough is where I used to work. So love that. Awesome, thank you both again for being here tonight. So we'll just jump right in. How about, can I have both of you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit more about who you are and share some more about these Jewish organizations that you're involved with. Blair, how about you start?
Okay, I will start. So thank you for the great introduction and for inviting me. So I think you covered my bio. I'm obviously from Florida. I moved here 11 years ago this July. I moved here just because I wanted to get away from where I was from. I didn't like growing up in Florida, so I moved here just on a whim. I had an invite from a friend to come live out here, and it was the best decision I ever made, and I'm glad I did it. Tisch PDX was founded in 2018 by Rabbi Ariel Stone, who's the Rabbi of Shir Tikvah, and one of the congregants there was a wonderful Jewish woman named Kayla Kohler-Cohen, and the current executive director of Tisch, who's Elena Fugman. She couldn't be here tonight, she's on her way to California. But Tisch was founded as hopefully an answer to this question of what is third wave Judaism, meaning, second wave Judaism, kind of like feminism, is much more, traditional, going to shul, being part of your congregation, being Jewish in that regard, and, just like all major religions, organized membership is going down over the last few decades, and Judaism is not immune to that. And so Rabbi Stone and Kaylin saw, there's so much young Jews in this town doing so many cool things that are not affiliated with a congregation or don't, there's some cool stuff going on over here on the west side, some cool stuff going on the east side, but there wasn't a lot of cohesion. So it was an opportunity to bring young Jews together that maybe marginalized in the sense that didn't grow up very Jewishly. Me, for one, I only have one Jewish parent, so I always kind of felt a little less than because of that, and I also didn't grow up very Jewishly. I went to temple when I was very young, but I don't remember that. I went through Bat Mitzvah because I wanted to do that, but that was not through a congregation. And so I've always been searching for my people. And I didn't find that in traditional congregation life. And so Tisch basically brings together folks. You apply for a cohort, so it's a 9 to 18 month cohort where we bring about 6 Jews together, anywhere from late 20s, early 40s. And once a month we get together on Shabbat and we do lots of Jewish learning. Rabbi Stone will do Torah study with us. And then we do a lot of leadership and anti-racist building. So we put on events, like I love putting on queer mikvahs and queer Shabbat dinners. Some folks do, workshops on union organizing. Some folks do, one of my cohort buddies does a class on just learning the Hebrew alphabet with other queer folks. And right now we're not doing any cohort work, but we do an alumni support program. So folks like me that have gone through the program, we can continue doing events and supporting the community and learning together, which is super important now and always, and just coalition building. So I think I'm done rambling. Tisch.
That was great.
Thanks.
So I came here just a year earlier than you, and just finishing up 12 years, heading into my bat mitzvah year of being in Portland, and came for the job at Congregation Beth Israel as a recently ordained person. So this is my first congregational job, and it might be my only congregational job, which is not typical of how rabbinic life works. I feel actually really lucky that I can be in one place and have been able to be in one place. I wanted to be in Portland when I was looking for a job, because Portland was the hip, cool place to be, and that there was a lot of queer folks in Portland. And so that was really important. Even when you don't really have a choice, the way that you get a job is, you cross your fingers and your toes and you hope that it all works out. But you never know, So I feel so incredibly fortunate that it worked out that way, that I could be here and be rooted in this community. And it's really interesting, this is what I love about Portland, is having things like Tisch and other things that are going on, and also having the establishment as well, trying to grow and change and serve different and similar purposes in that way. So I grew up in an established synagogue very similar to the one that I serve now. So I grew up in a big, large classical reform congregation in Cincinnati, Ohio. And then when I left and went to college, and then before I went to rabbinical school, I was in politics in Washington, D.C., and I was like, I never want to go to a big classical reform synagogue ever again. I left that and all of that, and so I did lots of other things in DC. There's amazing Jewish life for people in their 20s, and there was lots of little shtiebels happening. And then I went back to big classic Reform Judaism. So, and partially because I also wanted to make that a place of welcome. So I actually feel very fortunate that the one that I grew up in was a place of welcome. And I think because I had such a positive experience, even though I needed to have my own sort of rebellion in my 20s, that I have said I want that for other people. And I want to be able to be that example and that model, and that, whatever people are looking for, that you can find a place. And so Portland has been an amazing experience to do that. And, thinking about how we can continue to build upon the changes. I mean, even though Portland is Portland, it was and is a big shift to have me on the clergy team. It's going to be a huge shift in 3 years. I'm going to be senior rabbi of this congregation. It's going to be 170 years old, and that's a huge, huge shift. And also really, really exciting for the city, and really exciting for the future. And how we can create more partnerships. I mean, I always am like, we have a lot of space, that we don't use all the time. How can we, be open to all sorts of, different experiences and cohorts and things like that, so exciting.
Great, thank you both. This program tonight is part of Oregon Jews A to Z, which is our exhibition downstairs that kind of brings different objects together to create a mosaic about life, Jewish life in Oregon. So I'm curious if both of you could share a story about what being queer in Oregon, or a queer Jew in Oregon more specifically, means to you both. You both kind of touched on why you moved here, which was also part of our question. You could dive more into that if you want, but yeah, I'd love to hear a story about what it means to you here.
I guess I'll say, especially as somebody who just never, I had never even been west of the Mississippi when I moved here, never been to California, never been anywhere. So therefore I didn't really know much about Oregon history either. And as time's gone on, I've learned a lot, I think, and I think that's also because Oregon makes its history, even, the not so nice parts, really accessible. Even like museums like this, the History Museum, and one of my favorite shows on OTV is Oregon Experience. I love that show. And you can learn a lot, including about the Jewish frontier on Oregon Experience. Even the Jews that came here way back when, in the frontier times, it was always this, the spirit of, trying to do something new. And I feel like there's actually one of those panels out there. It was talking about a man who went to a service at I think the other Beth Israel, Temple Beth Israel in Eugene, and it just said, there was a hippie leading services, and it made him cry. And it's like, yeah, of course there was a hippie leading services in a congregation in Eugene. So stuff like that, just like the fact that Oregon isn't afraid to do new and innovative things, and I think, the fact that we have an organization like Tisch, that we're going to have a lesbian rabbi at a congregation that's been around before Oregon was even a state. I think that's pretty awesome, and I think that spirit is what brings people out here, and even though, again, some of Oregon's history is not super progressive, but I feel like at least in Portland, in the metro areas, we are very progressive. And I mean, even just, I see at least every day on the Portland subreddit, like some trans person or queer Jewish person or queer not Jewish person moving here and being like, am I going to find my community? And it's like, yes, you will find your community here. And I think that's great. And yeah, that's what I love about Portland.
I mean, it's interesting. I think it's the libertarian, nature that is both the blessing and the curse. It's what gives us the deep-seated racism that, the state was founded on in our Constitution into the 2000s. And I was doing some rituals around Juneteenth, and I was just reading, I hadn't realized that when they voted this language out of the Constitution in 2002, 30% of Oregonians still voted to keep it. So it's pretty phenomenal that only 20-something years ago that 30% were like, no, let's keep racism in our Constitution. But I actually think that goes to that sort of libertarian nature, and I think then on the progressive side of libertarianism is then we get this, amazing ability to be who you want to be, because it's like, leave me alone, I get to be who I want to be, which is phenomenal. And so when I think about, like, I've only lived in Portland raising kids, so I don't know necessarily that this is true, but I feel like, having spoken to people and all of this, that we have a very unique experience here where, you can be whatever you can be. We have two, according to my wife, but we have two middle schoolers, and, historically, and a high schooler, but historically, middle school is rough. And, one of our middle schoolers is queer, and, like, it makes my heart jump out of my skin when I was first thinking about it, and he has no problem, and all their friends, and can, like, talk about things, and he's not getting thrown in a garbage can or like beat up or anything like that, or ostracized, and that is unique, and that is an unbelievable experience, to be here and to watch, again, even like at a mainstream synagogue, that kids can be whoever they want to be in their Jewishness and all their intersectionality and queerness, and like, it's great. It's accepted, it's celebrated. This weekend we are celebrating, which not feels like all the time, but a b'nai mitzvah, and a kid who is transitioning, and we've had lots of great conversations about how do you want to be referred to, and I mean, like, that's unbelievable. And my child Rachel, thinking about myself when I was that age, I couldn't even imagine, where we are today. And that is like the gift of this part of the country right now.
Awesome. Can you speak a little more about those kind of generational shifts in acceptance? I mean, you've been here, you're both coming into your bar mitzvah year of living here, which is a good chunk of time. Like, what have you noticed about generational shifts in Portland and in Oregon around queer Jewishness and acceptance? I mean, you spoke about it a bit, about b'nai mitzvah and updating language, but what?
Yeah, I mean, huge. I think it's amazing to think about the shifts just in the last decade, or in the last 2 decades, is when I was in rabbinical school, and at the time my partner was trans, and it was a hard conversation in rabbinical school, and the faculty, what they were telling me to say and not say, and all of that. Only 15 years later, that would never be a conversation. So on one hand, it's amazing how much things have shifted in this time. We still have a lot more to go. There's always more work to do, and God knows whatever is going on nationally, where we're headed. But that shift, and even, again, speak from the mainstream, there were older congregants who sat there and raised their hand in favor of me becoming senior rabbi. There was nobody that said no. They might still have questions. They might still sometimes think this is my husband, and they don't mean it, and they just don't have the language sometimes, but they want to learn, and then they'll, it's you just work through that and have the conversations, but that wouldn't have happened, a generation ago. And so it really is amazing, and I think, as I've always said, I'm so glad to live now. It's so lucky that we live now in this part of the world.
Yeah, and I've been here almost 11 years now, but I didn't get involved with the Jewish community until 2018, and part of that was because Tisch didn't exist yet. I don't know why. And I think that in the last 10, 15 years, even the fact that the Jewish Federation built a new mikveh, the Rachel's Well mikveh, and it's egalitarian. Anybody can go there. They don't discriminate against trans folks. Anybody can go use the mikveh as long as you identify as Jewish. And as a guide there, I love being a guide there because it's completely up to you. If you need me, you need support, you need help with blessings, you need help with intention setting, whatever it is, that there's a whole Rolodex of not just me, there's a lot of other queer-friendly guides that are happy to help folks. And as somebody who didn't even know what a mikvah was really until maybe about 6-7 years ago, I think that's beautiful. And I also think the Jewish community here, especially as somebody who's come from South Florida, is just a lot more accessible, especially in welcoming to newcomers. Not saying that South Florida congregations aren't, but it's just a lot easier to be like, hey, I'm brand new. Where do I go? And I haven't had a shortage of any organization or synagogue that I've ever reached out to that is not welcoming or have something for queer folks. So I love that. Even thinking, you think of traditional organizations like the Federation that not being super queer friendly, but they are. They have a whole queer friendly pride contingent at the Federation here, and I hope that exists other places, but I'm really glad it exists here.
The mikvah, I'm so glad that you brought up mikvah, and that I'm so glad that you're bringing so many people to the mikvah, because we actually have a really unique mikvah. I happened to be president of the Oregon Board of Rabbis when we built the mikvah and helping to do all of that. It's really unique. There's nowhere else in the country where we have this partnership where the mikvah is a community mikvah in the way that it's owned by the Federation and the Oregon Board of Rabbis, and co-op fees almost by a lot of the organizations. Because mikvah is one of those unique rituals that everybody can participate in. There are lots of other things and red lines that different streams of Judaism say yes and no to, but the mikvah, the power of the mikvah, that everybody can have their experience from, you don't believe in God to you're ultra-Orthodox and whatever it is, you can't mess it up. You can't mess up mikvah. You can't mess up the mikvah. You can't make it not kosher. I mean, it's so amazing that we can have something that everyone can use and everyone can make it meaningful for themselves. It just makes me so happy that you're using it.
They're actually having a Pride event there. I'm just helping, and I can't remember what day it is, but sometime this weekend.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of a mikvah holding a queer event like that. That's really great. Awesome. You all have really touched on a lot of our questions already, or answering them so beautifully. I guess we'll pivot a little bit, and I would love to hear more, Blair, about Tisch. Tisch being a newer organization that was created specifically to serve Jews who don't typically affiliate with institutional Judaism. So what is Tisch doing to reach the queer community in Portland?
Yeah, so I was lucky, and I was part of the second cohort, and somehow all 6 of us were queer in some way. It's just that we didn't even try to do that, it just happened. And there have been a lot of queer folks in and out of Tisch since then and before me. But I want to say I just even found out about Tisch through, there is a Facebook, Facebook is bleh, but one of the reasons I'm still on there is for, it's called just Queer Jews Portland, PDX Queer Jews, that's what it's called. And it's just a Facebook page where a bunch of queer Jews in Portland can post events, talk about issues, whatever it is, share ideas, share whatever they want to share. And Tisch posted there that they're looking for applicants, and I was like, cool. I actually had just come back from Israel. I went on my birthday trip when I was 32 years old. They did a pilot where they allowed that to happen for a little bit, and when I came back, I was like, I gotta get involved in the community here. I've tried a few times, but I never found my people. I'm gonna try again, and I found Tisch. So we, like I said, you don't need to be queer to join Tisch, but we're very queer friendly, and we just basically are trying to reach folks that, like I said earlier, that didn't grow up very Jewishly like me. Because, there's something about, I love Beth Israel, I love them, but I remember when I first moved here, I emailed somebody and they gave me tickets to go to high holiday services, and I went all by myself. I think it was the first year I was here. And I was overwhelmed by the beauty of the building and the history of the building, but also overwhelmed by the size of it and the congregation, and it was very much like the temple I went to when I was younger. And it was like beautiful, but I don't think my people are here. So I don't think I went to high holiday services for a couple of years after that. But that can be, I know I'm not the only Jew that's had that experience, especially a queer Jew or a Jew of color. Just initially, and not for anything that y'all did. It was just like, this is just a little overwhelming for me. I don't know anybody here. I don't know any Jews in this town, and this is a lot. Tisch, is a place for Jews like that, and especially because I was like, oh, they might find out that my mom's not Jewish, or they might find out that I don't know this prayer, or that I didn't go to Jewish summer camp. Like, those feelings that you have when you join a group, and again, those are all my own, insecurities anybody has, but I wanted to find a community on a smaller scale and with more people that looked like me and were my age and my same place that I was in my life at the time, and I found Tisch, Tisch found me, and from there I was able to cultivate this beautiful Jewish community that I feel really held by every day. And I know that if I want to have a Shabbat dinner and talk about really difficult topics, I have a whole list of people that I love and support me, and we can come together and do that and share a meal and share happiness and share sorrow and all that. And I think that's all I'll say.
I love that. It's great.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it should be.
Thanks. And Rabbi, oh sorry, I don't cut you off. Kind of building off of what Blair was sharing, can you share a bit more about how CDI is adjusting to stay inclusive and intentional with the community as our understanding of queer identity grows and changes?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, as I've been saying, like, representation matters and actually doing things. So that means, that every time we're always checking in with kids about what are your preferred pronouns. I mean, even something as simple but important as that is with B'nai Mitzvah, modeling all of that is just huge, that, even in a big place, that things can change and things can grow, and that you can see by example that we're trying to shift language, be more aware in all programs that are planned, that just sort of like a whole different lens of looking at things. And it all stems from, I would say, all of our sort of DEI expansive work that we really consciously started digging into just in 2020. I mean, it was really just in 2020 that there was conscious forward-thinking effort into, we need to really evaluate everything that's going on in our institution, top to bottom, and that is deep, ongoing work. I mean, that is, something that happens every single day as we're putting out information and planning things and having conversations and who needs to be involved, that it's, it's of and not just about. And so I think it's like really, really big things that then affect even all the little, and we're not perfect and we have so much to do and keep going. And that's why I said, like, I just am I'm so happy for you, and I'm such in awe of everything that's going on, in this town. And that's what's great. I mean, that's ultimately what we want, is everyone to just find your place and your people. That's the goal. The goal is to find your community and feel good and supported and seen, however that manifests. And so we all, I think, we try that in different ways.
Yeah, I think Tisch and CDI both are creating this big tent for Judaism in Portland, where everyone can kind of come in, they can find their entry point, and they can find their people, and it fits all different comfort levels and observance levels. And I'm just very grateful that we have such forward-thinking organizations, both legacy and new, really taking this work seriously and being very conscientious about it. We also have talked about this a little bit, but how has Portland, with its legacy as a Western frontier town, created an environment today that is drawing queer Jews from all over the diaspora to move here? What do you think lends itself to creating that environment here, and how are you seeing Portland legacy families intersect with newcomers?
I think we talked about it. There is that rugged spirit. I always say the Oregon Trail is still alive and well, and all these different ways. And I said, even our legacy congregation, that 50% of the people are not legacy. So we're also just really lucky that Portland is growing. Some ways I'm sad that it's climate refugees, and it's wonderful that there are people that are moving here all the time. And so, that's just constant influx of new ideas and new excitement and desires and all of that. So I think we're lucky, and I think that, if you are, so at our place where we do have all these legacy we do have legacy families. There are times when that's, they can bump up against each other, and there's negotiating that happens and learning and growing. But I also think that ultimately people want to know that Jewish community is going to continue long after they are no longer here. And so I think mostly people are just excited that it is continuing, that it is growing, that there's more organizations. I mean, so many of my quote unquote congregants or people are supporting so much that's going on the East Side. It's just because you might be a congregant at Beth Israel doesn't mean that you don't care and support everything that's going on in the larger Jewish community. And a lot of those are legacy families. And I'm thankful that we have legacy families that have some resources that are willing to invest in, Jewish community and Jewish life beyond just what their narrow scope is. I mean, that way we're super lucky. And I think we're doing better and better. I feel like even when I got here 12 years ago, there was more siloing. We're still siloed, and we're too small of a Jewish community to be as siloed as we are. And that's what I don't totally understand it, but I really think it goes back to libertarianism. And I think we're getting better though, and I think that also just going after some more of these legacy families to think more expansively and to help invest in that. I think that's amazing. It's really been happening more.
Yeah, you reminded me that I forgot to even mention in the last few years, the Eastside Jewish Commons became a real thing. It was a group I'm sure you all might be familiar, but if you're not, it's this group of folks that lived on the East Side. There's not a huge Jewish presence over there. There's one congregation, the one that I'm a part of, Shir Tikva, and they didn't even have their own building for most of the time they have existed. And so the Eastside Jewish Commons is Shir Tikva leases space there, but it's just this gigantic space on the east side on 24th and Sandy that a lot of Jewish organizations, the EJC itself, it's its own organization, but like One Table, which is a group for younger Jews, supports them doing Shabbat dinners. It's pretty awesome. They give you they call it nourishment stipend, so they give you a certain amount of money to host Shabbat dinners every Friday, which I love. So they have space there. Tisch has space there, but it's this great hub for all these different Jewish organizations, even the ones on the west side. Like I know there's some, satellite groups over there that are from, the main organizations on this side of the river. But also, I think that something that also draws folks to Oregon is, especially nowadays, climate, yes, sadly, but also just, sadly, what's going on with healthcare in our country right now. The fact that we still allow people to do whatever they choose to do with their bodies when it comes to pregnancy, that we allow that, and also our gender-affirming care here is pretty amazing. And I think we're really lucky to have that. And we also, need somebody who works in healthcare now, I've worked on the Medicare side of healthcare before I moved to the Permanente side of things. And even in the, public health space here at OHA, they offer great, amazing, comprehensive gender care. And I think that's amazing, especially somebody who's coming from Florida where just even getting Medicaid isn't a thing, really. So, I think that's great.
All right. If an organization has not meaningfully engaged the queer Jewish community or the trans community before, what are some ways that they can start to build those relationships? And feel free to speak as an individual or from your organizational standpoint.
Well, I think some of the things you mentioned, Rabbi, like honoring people's pronouns. I think you all even reissue B'nai Mitzvah certificates if folks change their pronouns or their names. Those are all great things. But I also think, sometimes Shir Tikva is called queer tikva because we have such a large group of people that identify as queer that come to our congregation. But at the same time, similar to your congregation, that can cause friction with more of the legacy members of Shir Tikva. But, we're still a pretty young congregation, definitely compared to CPI. Only about 20, 25 years old. And, even though the older folks there, and I think, my folks still live here, but like, I think of them and how they, I don't understand the pronoun thing. I try, I just don't understand. But it's like, oh, and they're trying though. And I think, I get that vibe more from the Jewish community that I'm with, that it's not that I was like, oh, it's too hard, I'm not going to try it. But like, I'm trying and I'm doing it. And it's also just like, not paying the queer or trans community lip service, like, oh, let's do this one Pride event, or let's do this one, trans-focused event. It's sustaining that in a really genuine way and continuing to, grow those bonds with your, with your Jewish community, your trans community, and your Jewish trans community, and talking about the intersection of all of our identities and just not paying it lip service, as I said, like really making it a central part of your congregation or whatever your organization is.
Yeah, show, don't tell. It's actually show what you're doing it, proving that you're doing it. And I think things are growing and changing, and I do love that some of the older people will come and ask questions. I've done classes, on how to talk to your grandkids and what to say and what to ask, what not to ask, and all these things. And I think that's great that then they feel comfortable coming and talking and asking those questions and not being afraid to make mistakes with me, so that then they can, do better with them. And I think that's also the beauty of, it's what I love about sort of our sacred spaces and religion in this. It's a place where generations can interact, and we have so few places like that in our normal everyday world, and sort of the loss of the public square and all of that, you can all be together and you can learn and you can grow, and that's how we get better. We have to make mistakes, we have to do better, we have to change and face the next day. And so what better places than in these spaces? And I think, again, I think most of our organized Jewish community in Portland is all making concerted efforts to be doing better, and reaching out. I think even said, like you pointed out, like even something like Jewish Federation, is really trying to gather folks together and build coalition. And that might not have happened 10 years ago. And I think more organizations that might have been skeptical are also doing a little bit better of saying, hey, let's put some of the skepticism aside for a little bit and see, how this goes. So I'm hopeful for all that in the future.
Okay, any last thoughts or anything you want to share before we take questions and have just a free-form conversation?
Let's take questions.
Yeah, anyone? Sure. Questions?
How did this come to be? Like, how were you two chosen or did you volunteer?
That's the origin story. I guess I can answer that. The origin story was that the exhibition got extended into June, and so we were like, okay, it's Pride Month, let's have a Pride program. And I appreciate the make it a sustained effort in your organization, because this has not been a sustained effort in our organization. There have been, we do a lot of work to support marginalized identities, but we've never really been, as far as I know, super intentional about explicitly welcoming queer Jews into our space. You can see that reflected in our collection downstairs, where there's just a few objects that speak to the queer experience in Oregon Jews A to Z. And so we wanted to help bring out those stories that our objects can't speak to. And many of our staff are members of CBI. So, and we have a ketubah downstairs that was the first same-sex ketubah signed in the state of Oregon. Pretty sure, and it's from CBI. It's from a couple that got married at CBI. The ketubah artwork itself reflects the building, which is quite beautiful. And so that was, and a lot of the objects in the exhibition downstairs are related to CBI's history. So that was part of it. And then I know of Blair from museum work and just also from Tisch, and I know Elena as well, who is one of the co-directors of Tisch PDX, and so just felt quite natural to have the two of them in conversation with each other. And this is definitely not the last time that we will go into topics like this and welcome more and more communities into our space. It's the start, but not the end.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. Yeah. Other questions?
I was just going to say, I love having conversations like this. I grew up in San Francisco, so I'm just super used to a liberal space, and was always used to, like, the Castro was huge, like not only space-wise, but just so, kid-friendly, and like I was so used to liberal, and I'm Mexican, and like was just so used to being able to celebrate who I am. And I went to college in Spokane, Washington, and holy moly, holy moly, like it was the exact opposite. And it's so interesting to come to Portland and see that, like, it's so progressive, and like what you touched on, like I remember seeing this documentary when I first got here, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know Portland's past or Oregon's past. It always heard so liberal, and I appreciate that they don't deny it, and like this is what we're working on. And I've noticed, I almost feel like it's become somewhat of a cliche where you go to places and like it says everyone welcome, and truly everybody is welcome. Like any space that I've gone to, like last night I was at the EJC, like tonight I'm here, tomorrow I'll be at Shabbat at CBI. Like I felt welcome everywhere. And it's really great, and it's really great to hear that everyone's feeling, progressive. So it's great, it's a good feeling. And you hear all these things about Portland in the news, and I'm like, oh, Portland's gonna make a comeback. It's gonna make a comeback.
That frontier town legacy, it's got the upside and the downside. The upside being you can make whatever you want happen, and the downside being the history of the downside of that, which you can learn more about in Discrimination and Resistance right outside this auditorium. But yeah, thank you for sharing, for being here tonight. Any other questions, thoughts, stories you want to share?
I'm genuinely just curious. We talk a lot, and so honored to have this raising children in this city and having the opportunity for them to live in the fullness of their truth in a way that maybe I didn't experience growing up. But one of the things I'm curious about is within this expansion of engagement in the Jewish community here, do you ever find that there are families that perhaps became disconnected by not feeling or seeing themselves represented or included in those spaces, returning? Do you have those experiences? Is that part of the process?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I always think about who's not here. And I think there's a lot of things that, not related to the queerness, that there are people that we're really missing that I've been thinking about recently. So that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I mean, I think this is when, specifically talking about the queerness, that we have several families in our congregation that were not a part of the congregation, and then we're like, wait, I can have a place there? There's nothing we can do about our building, and I know it's a barrier. It's so hard because it is awe and awe. I mean, it's just in every sense of that word. And so to get through that threshold and all of that is a huge, huge deal. But being like, wait, I can be a queer family at this big congregation. Oh, I see that it's possible now. And so it's interesting, like thinking about the Ketubah, or again, the queer families from upon which the shoulders I stand, you know, and they sit there going like, same thing, you know, like, I can't believe what it is now. You know, I can't believe what, you know, we had to fight for 30 years ago, and, you know, now what it is in a place where the next generation can be. And we should be doing that in all of these different ways. So, right, so now I think about like, okay, I can be a model for this, but I can't be a model for, you know, this other thing I'm thinking about. And yeah, how do we just continually evaluate our spaces and our communities for who is missing? Who is missing? Because there's just, we you know, historically, there are so many people that have been missing at the table. And I'm so glad that, you know, I've been able to achieve what I've been able to achieve in this space, and there's just so many other marginalized folks that are missing that we need to work on.
Yeah, I think it's easy to lament how far we still have to go, and in that we miss how far we've come. And so I appreciate the reminder. Reminds me of my favorite quote from the Pirkei about you are not obligated to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to desist from it. And I think Portland's Jewish queer community is really a totally awesome example of that, and pushing us all to think about who else is not here, not just queer folks that are not being included, but all of the other intersectional pieces of our identities that get put aside to fit into spaces. And I'm very grateful for both the work that you're doing at both your organizations to be expansive and welcoming. It really matters. And I think Portland is modeling for the rest of the country how to be an inclusive queer city and an inclusively queer Jewish city, for sure.
So, building on the looking for who's missing, I think there's a tendency to look for respectability, gays and lesbians, and not to look towards the rude queers. Leather, poly, various other aspects of queer, and I'm curious how that does or does not intersect with Jewish community in Portland.
I was thinking of one of the first times I went to high holiday services at my current congregation at Tikva, and there's two gay men sitting in front of me, and I'm pretty sure it was Yom Kippur, and they both had their queer colored hankies in the back of their pocket. I was like, this is probably where I'm going to join once I saw it. And if you don't know what queer hanky code is, you can look it up after this. But I think we have those, those queers are at my congregation. I know them, I've had dinner with them, I've prayed with them. And, you know, I think just particularly my congregation, for continuing to model that all Jews are welcome. Like we're not even affiliated with any movement, particularly just because you got to come see us to see what we are. Like we can't really describe it. And I think I'm really happy to be a part of an unaffiliated synagogue for that reason. Like I feel like takes away that barrier. I'm like, oh, I don't really know what this movement is, or what does it really mean to be a conservative Jew? I don't really know myself, so it was a low barrier for me, and I think Portland's a great town for, once you find your community, bring more people in, and I think Tikva is a good example of that. And like a lot of these folks that I'm thinking of may not even belong to my congregation, but they come out for high holidays, or they'll come out for a particular event, and I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a non-threatening queer. I know that. And part of that I often say is like the moderates break down the door so everybody can walk through. So I fully own that in that way. And while I know that we have other folks in our community, it is certainly not the norm. And I think, again, it's like how you sort of grow in different ways. So yeah, you're going to go to Tikva, and it's going to be a very different experience of outward expression right, in that way that Beth Israel is just not there. And again, that's why I think it's so great that all these different spaces exist. Doesn't mean that we wouldn't be there. I mean, it's super interesting, right? Because like we're changing our database because we have more than one, you know, polyamorous family. Where like I remember maybe it was only like 8 years ago when it was the first time someone asked me to do a poly wedding, and I remember having this huge meeting with my clergy colleagues and what do we do and what do I do, and you know, like, so again, how much things have changed in a relatively short amount of time. You know, so these are all things that are like very much on the mind, thinking about, right, like how do you change the database, right? Like is like part of that. But those are like important things, you know, and how you talk about families and all that, and right, especially because in our synagogue, like in a synagogue like ours, there's so much focus on family units and religious school and things like that. So that's, you know, the framework in that way. But yeah, I mean, so I'd be really interested to see in another 10 years, like, what does Congregation Beth Israel look like? I mean, it'd be really interesting, you know.
You want to make a prediction?
Anyway.
In 10 years, you'll be 7 years into your other rabbi.
I mean, what's funny is I was thinking about the first time I went to one of the queer Havarot in DC, and I was, you know, 22 years old or whatever, and there were these guys sitting in front of me wearing their leather chaps, and I was like, wow. You know, I can like remember being the 20-year-old, like, wow, you know, a thing. And so, you know, who knows?
It's going to pave the way, that's what we know.
Yeah,
exactly, that's what we do.
I feel like there's a space for everyone. I haven't been, and I've never been, but a friend of mine went to the End Shul. Is it still around?
I haven't seen that they've been doing a lot, but
Because Rabbi Denniberg left, you know, several years ago.
yeah.
Okay, maybe that's why I haven't heard about it. It just seems like there's such like spaces. I've been to a lot of the synagogues in Portland, and like everyone's a little bit different, and like certainly everyone's welcoming, but like it's just, it seems like there's just space for everyone.
And going back to the conservative thing, like as somebody who didn't grow up very Jewishly, I was like, I knew it didn't mean politically conservative, but it still spooked me. And what I know of Sharing Torah, which is one of our conservative synagogues, is it's very welcoming, and I've been there a few times. I know some queer folks that hold on to it, and yeah, there is something for everybody here, you're right.
Yeah, like in the last couple of years, I've gone to the Purim celebration with Collab. And it's such like a surreal moment because half the people are in drag, but like hands down, everybody was so respectful. Like everyone knew the prayers, like everyone genuinely was welcoming. It's really just such a like awe-inspiring experience to go.
Yeah, the young, especially young queer Jewish community in this town is, I think, second to none.
Seriously. All right. Any other questions, or I can stop the recording and we can get really into it? No. Okay, well, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Please come back and check out Ward and Juicy to see before it closes this weekend if you didn't get a chance to see it yet. And happy Pride Month. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Come to Pride.